Welcome everyone to the January 18th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Would you all please stand for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Mr. Bentley is absent tonight, excused absence, so Mr. Tuckfield, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Spatafora.
Here.
Mr. Meyerly.
Here.
Mr. Tuckfield is present. Mr. Hardy.
Here.
Ms. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Oliver.
Here.
Mr. Bentley is absent.
And it's excused. Before we go any further, I'd like to welcome Mrs. Smith as one of our new planning commissioners, and Mr. Meyerly over here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
I think in keeping with the time-honored tradition of the person that sits over here, it's fallen upon me, and I'm honored to continue it by making a motion to exclude Member Secretary Bentley from all roll call votes this evening.
okay. Motion made to exclude Mr. Bentley, seconded by Mr. Oliver. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. All right, approval of the previous meeting minutes. Any discussion? Do we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Bentley had brought some issues and concerns with the minutes, item 6A, as far as the petitioner TRE development. He asked the board to consider the petitioner's, the petitioner wasn't present for that agenda item. Action was taken on it, though. And for item 7A as well, just prior to the vote summary, there was, he took issue as far as, and I do recall that and would tend to agree with Mr. Bentley's point that where it indicates on the record that there was private road status of Spring Valley Drive must be considered by the Planning Commission. That's on the bottom of page 3 of 6. I recall there was some discussion and consideration, and there was a recommendation to approve Spring Valley Drive as a private road as it complies with the pertinent section of the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So if the board so chooses and agrees with me, the commission, I would make that motion just to amend the minutes to reflect those two comments from Mr. Bentley, which I concur on.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Spatafora with those two changes.
Just clarification, Mr. Bach, did you get all that?
Yep. And I'll support
we're
for the
good.
record.
Mr. Bentley had emailed that earlier in the
Okay,
day. So
thank
yep,
you.
Yes, I have that.
All right, yes, I support that.
Okay, Drew seconding it? Is that what, okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Approval of tonight's agenda. I'd like to add B, which will be the election of officers after we do tonight's business. And other than that, I don't have anything else to add. So I'll make the motion, I guess, unless anybody's got any discussion. Okay?
Support it,
Anybody?
Mr. Chairman.
Support by Mr. Tuckfield. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. New business, public hearings. Site plan, Wolverine Villas, permanent parcel 0805-301-008, located east of Romeo Plank on the north and north of 25 Mile Road, Section 5, LLC petitioner, Mr. Box.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. I know we have some new members tonight. Those of you who are not new members might remember this development. It did come before you several months ago, I want to say August, for a conditional rezoning. So that allowed them to rezone the property conditionally to R2L, and they had a number of conditions that were self-imposed that we'll get into on the next slide. But as you mentioned, this property is located in Section 5. north of the roundabout at Romeo Plank and 25, the original roundabout, I guess I should say, and northeast of the new roundabout at Romeo Plank and 25. That's not shown in this aerial, but there is another roundabout there. And it is a proposed residential development with duplex buildings to be developed with no more than 116 total units. So when they did come before you as a conditional rezoning, you see listed there the conditions that were imposed by themselves to make this acceptable by you as the Planning Commission, that they would develop in this fashion, things like the 20-foot wide landscape buffer, all providing all of the appropriate setbacks, working with the County Department of Roads to give them the right-of-way needed on 25 and Romeo Plank, as well as limiting themselves to the 116 total units. So now they're here for the site plan. By rule, the plan you saw with the conditional rezoning can only be considered a concept plan, although what they're here in front of you with for the site plan is virtually identical to what you saw that night. So not much, if anything, has changed here. So they have met all the parking requirements, the setbacks and dimensional requirements. All the access has been shown, as well as sidewalks and pathways. Floor plans and elevations meet the requirements. And we did confirm the site entry features. The landscape plan was also included in your packet. Ample landscaping is provided throughout. We would recommend a little bit more landscaping in the area kind of highlighted there. They do have the 20-foot landscape buffer separating 25 Mile with their development, but there is another residence immediately to the west of that drive entrance, and I think it would be appropriate to have a little bit more of a landscape buffer there to shield those residents. I know if you're heading westbound on 25 Mile and you were going to turn right in there, especially in the evening, there might be a lot of light glare into that property there. Otherwise, they did confirm the few items that were noted in Melissa's plan review, the parking space dimensions and so forth. And at this time, all internal departments have no reason to object and are in support of this.
Okay. Petitioner, please state your name and address, and do you have anything you'd like to share?
Lyle Wynn with Lombardo Homes. Address is 13001 23 Mile Road. Josh covered everything, all the details pretty clearly. The one thing I would interject is that following the Planning Commission recommendation, last August range, we worked closely with the attorney, and then we also had to go to Township Board with the actual agreement that put all this into motion, finalized that. That document's been signed and recorded, so it's in place. Now we bring you the actual site plan for consideration. These are duplex units. The price range we were talking about last summer was still hold. We're about the starting price point is about mid 300s for the units here. Some of the units are full brick, all four sides. Some are a combination of siding and brick. We intend to, just change colors, little, difference in siding, so they're not all looking exactly the same as you go down the road. We will be working closely with spacing that information out, so it just has a little bit of variation as we, put them in. With that, all the conditions still apply. What we talked about last time got worked into the agreement. We have not changed the site plan from when we originally went through the planning department review process, so it is still the same site plan. I concur with the additional landscaping along that side. That entry road is a little tight to the existing home. And so, yeah, we do agree with providing a little extra buffer there.
Okay. Commissioners. Mr. Spatafor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to clarify a few things Mr. Box, I think, generally alluded to, if you can just clarify for me, and this mostly has to do with Melissa's review in the planning department. There was a note that the maximum lot coverage required is 25%, and the your department, Josh, indicated that the compliance was to be determined, and has that been met then, the
Yes.
25%?
Yeah, I think she had 4 different items that she listed to be
Right.
determined, and we did confirm all of those items.
Oh, they all, okay. So the,
I think it was parking space dimensions, the entrance features, and I forget what the other one was.
sign access posts, that was
Yeah,
confirmed
yep.
too. The notice of the public hearing was generated on December 15th, so did that get out and published on time as well?
Yes.
Okay. I noticed at least in my packet, in the agenda item, pages 22 through 26, there included elevation drawings of 2 different developers with 2 different companies. It was a little bit confusing until, I don't know if anyone else caught that in their packet, but I set them aside because it was not Wolverine Villas, it was 2 of our other developer friends that somehow their work product got mixed in with ours. So, and you indicated that the, in our packet, the conditional rezoning agreement, it was signed by your office, Mr. Nguyen. There was no signature from the township, so I take it, Mr. Aloya, that it has been executed and everything's complied with to your satisfaction and recorded?
Yes, it was signed by Supervisor Viviano and our clerk, and our office, in fact, sent it for recording. I was just gonna check to see if we got it back or not. I know it was submitted, so.
Okay. Thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Just one question, Mr. Box.
Oliver?
Could you go over to the, you were saying the buffer was a little bit short for you, or was it?
No, they're required, per their conditional rezoning, a 20-foot buffer along 25 Mile and Romeo Plank. And that's what we were pointing out here in this slide. So if I can use my cursor and you can see kind of in this area that they do have, 20 feet of a landscape buffer. But technically this is also still along 25 Mile. We were suggesting that the landscaping from here be extended out to the edge of the property to shield the house that would sit immediately
Got it.
adjacent.
Yep. Mr. Winter, are you aware of that?
I am aware of that. We're in agreement with that.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to clarify the 2 different
Sure.
elevations. We are actually partners with MJC Homes in this endeavor. We are the point person for the project. So yes, they will have their units and our units, combined in the project.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you for that clarification.
There's a little more mixture of units in there.
So what was in there but referred to as different
Yes, that
developments?
was products they've used on other projects in the township. They were gonna bring that product over here.
Okay, thank you.
All right. No. Mr. Tuckfield?
Mr. Chairman, I did have a question for Mr. Nguyen. You had mentioned kind of the price range you were expecting these to go for. Housing prices have been, shall we say, volatile for the last 2 years.
A little bit.
Can you give us some understanding of where that falls within your spectrum of portfolio pricing?
When we deal with duplex units, it's kind of in the mid-range. I mean, I don't think you can go a whole lot lower without really cheapening the product. So that's our starting point, the mid-300s. So depending on purchasers' desires and treatment on the interior and, finishes they want to use, it can escalate from there, so.
So would it be, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but just generally, it's a base mid-range product?
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
agreed.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One
Anyone
quick
else?
question to Mr. Nguyen. When would you expect to start on this?
So we have dabbled with the preliminary engineering. I think if we get, planning commission approval, we can proceed with meeting with engineering staff here at the township to go over the preliminary review process. Following that, and the Eagle permitting and floodplain fill is probably our longest lead time. We would typically want to try to achieve an approval of the engineering plans by late summer, early September, so that we would start construction in the fall and work through the winter, be ready for paving in the spring, summer.
Okay. And your road is gonna be your own, that'll be a new road. You're not using no existing roads of any of the,
Correct. These are all new roads in there, yes.
okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Just
That's
another
bad.
follow-up. with what you indicated, Mr. Oliver, about the roads. I think for the planning commission's consideration tonight is whether the road should be public or private.
Typically, that would be, and I guess maybe I'll defer to Mr. Aloya, but the concept plan that was part of the conditional rezoning approval showed them as private. So I would assume that kind of already gives them the authorization to move forward with a private road, but I don't know, Mr. Aloya, if you have a different interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, the concept plan is incorporated into the agreement, and so that's the concept that was approved by the board.
Thank you.
Okay.
Just, Mr. Chairman, if I could, just to follow up on that, my assumption is this board probably still would recommend it. Does it make sense if so desired to continue to recommend it? I don't know if it's necessary, but would you think it'd be a best practice to in this case?
If
Say
you-
we
if you-
continue to recommend this, makes sense?
If you say you recommend it consistent with the conceptual plan, then that's fine.
Okay.
But I think that will be brought out in township board meeting that the concept plan had private roads.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Okay. Well, at this time, I need a motion to open it to the public. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Spatafora, supported by Mr. Meyerly, at 6:46. And I got a little spiel I read, just so you know what it's all about. As we open the public hearing, any person wishing to speak will be recognized and will be asked to give their name and address before speaking. We ask that all speakers limit their comments to 4 minutes. Once the public portion is closed, we will not recognize any further discussion or comments on this item. Anyone like to speak? Ma'am, come up to the podium, please.
Nancy Klein. It's C-L-I-N-E. Address is 16795, 25 Mile Road. So I appreciate all of the comments that people have made about the extra landscaping, because I am that house that's just west of the 25 Mile entrance. My concerns are, I noticed on the site plan I just picked up today, the angled exit. Looks like it starts and comes across the whole front of my property. I already have a right turn lane, and now it looks like I'm gonna lose more. I realize it's probably easement, but I'm just bringing it up as a safety concern because I noticed the Romeo Plank entrance kind of comes in and then angles back where it needs to angle, and I'm not quite sure why that exit area needs to come even further onto, into my frontage. There's also a road drain that I'm wondering, would that be affected? It's low, it's next to the road. If the road gets built up to accommodate that lane, would that drain then be raised with the road, meaning I'm gonna take drain off in that front? So I always have concerns of water, where water retention, now my own safety, and being in my front yard with now additional, when I'm out mowing, I'm gonna watch 2 lanes of traffic coming at me, people who don't slow down, even with the roundabout ahead, a lane, a right turn lane, and now an angle across the front of people coming out, which also makes me wonder, am I losing my black walnut, which I've always referred to as my safety barrier tree? Is that going? So I bring up those concerns, and I just want to say something real brief. I realize as all of the new home building goes on, sometimes those of us in the older homes are maybe just thought of, we don't care, but my house is over 100 years old. I'm only the 3rd owner on record that I can find. The first owner on record being the one who sold that land, the farmer that sold that land to Wolverine. I've joked with people that if anybody wants me out of their way, I'd load my house on a flatbed and take it with me. It's so tiny, I don't even have ductwork. There's no need for it. My house is heated with a beautiful freestanding granite cast iron fireplace. I love it, and I'd take that house with me. There's things I'd love to do with it, and I'm not gonna say if I have more money at some point. I'm gonna say when I have more money. I'd love to do more things to that while it sits right there. I wanna be safe. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Anyone else? Either one of you? Oh, sure? Okay. All right, at this time, I'd like a motion to close the public hearing at, hold on, let me get it. 6:51. Is there a motion?
I'll make that motion to close the hearing.
Motion by Mrs. Smith,
No support.
supported by Mr. Meyerly. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Then the public portion is closed. Okay. And do we have a motion on this item?
Just one
Sure. Mr.
question,
Oliver.
either Mr. Wynn or Mr. Bach, on this young lady that just come up here and spoke. Truly, we want to make sure that her rights or her property is not being affected by this. Somebody want to speak on that?
Yep, Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
I think she has a valid concern. The plan we have put together predates the actual physical work that the road commission did out there already, where they did actually widen portions of that roadway. So we are in the process of resurveying that entrance to tie in where that new edge of pavement is versus where the original, our plan showed it at that time. I suspect much of what we show there at the entrance has changed enough so that we will not be adding much pavement at all for that taper lane for exiting. So we will certainly be updating that first before we randomly start, preparing plans to widen it any further. Plus, we'll have to coordinate with the road commission. There may not be a reason to widen it any further as well.
Okay.
I would also add that the developer cannot just add a lane onto her property unless they have an easement. So it's either a pre-existing easement that Department of Roads has, or it's an easement that they would need to require from the property owner.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Box, did you have anything you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would just add that any of that Excel, decel would be outside of the site that we're looking at. That would be in the right of way. That would be something that would be worked out with the road department. She did mention a drain in that area, and again, that I think we hear that comment often. Obviously, this site being along the Clinton River, they have a very large proposed detention basin. They have lots of drainage things to work out in the engineering phase, and that's another item that would be handled there, not really something that's handled in the planning portion.
Okay. All right. Mr. Tuffield, do you have a question?
No, other than just to Mr. Nguyen, obviously you're hearing the comments here tonight, and most of this is probably not our purview, but we just ask that you please take it into advisement, so the areas that are not in front of us tonight, you make sure that you're
No problem.
working with the neighbor.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Do we have a motion on this item?
Mr. Chairman,
Okay.
I'd
Mr.
move we approve the site plan for Wolverine Villa and also include that them were private roads, be part of the motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
And Mr. Spatafora is going to second that. Mr. Tuffield, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Oliver.
Yes.
Mr. Spatafora.
Yes.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes.
Mr. Meyerly.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Chuckfield votes yes. Mr. Chairman, the motion passes 6-0.
Okay. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen. All right, thank you, guys. And ma'am, he will be, taking care of you as best he can.
Thank you for even bringing up right away about the extra landscaping.
Okay.
I've been there 34 years. It's difficult to see that land go.
I hear you.
I pulled up the picture of your property. That is a beautiful tree.
It's my barrier tree.
All right, next item on the list is election of officers. So This is my first time as chairman, so I'm not sure exactly how to do this, but I think I'm just going to start it off and nominate Mr. Bentley as our secretary. I've been in contact with him. He's willing to do it again. I think, Mr. Oliver, you've talked to him.
Yep.
And so that's my motion to reappoint Mr. Bentley as secretary. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, seconded by Mr. Oliver. Yeah, let's do it, make it fair.
All right, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hardy,
Yes.
Mr. Oliver,
Yes.
Ms. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Meyerly.
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield votes yes. Mr. Spatafora.
Yes.
All right, motion passes unanimously. So welcome, Mr. Bentley.
Yeah.
You're back at it again for another year. All right. There's the chairperson position, and do we do the assistant chair?
The
Vice
assistant,
chair. Do that
the
as well?
assistant to the chair.
Huh?
For those versed in the office, for the office lore, the assistant to the chair. Not sure if anybody's gonna get
Well,
that, but.
I will go ahead and make a motion to renominate Mr. Tuckfield as vice chair for the planning commission.
And I'll support that.
Okay. Call the roll, Mr. Tuckfield?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Spatafora.
Yes.
Mr. Meyerly.
Yes.
Mr. Hardy.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Oliver.
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield abstains as this motion is on myself.
Okay. Then the motion passes unanimously, well, including your abstention, I guess, yeah.
Fair enough.
Whatever.
And thank you.
Okay. And then the chairperson. Do we have nominations?
I'll nominate Mr. Hardy.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Meyerly.
I will support that.
All right, so, not, Mr., okay, Mrs. Smith supported. Okay. Mr. Tuckfield, call the roll.
Very good, Mr. Hardy. Mr. Meyerly.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
Yes.
Mr. Hardy.
I'll abstain.
Very good. Sorry, I would have put you later in the order if I was thinking of correctly. Mr. Oliver.
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield votes yes. Mr. Spatafora.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you all very much. Next item on our, is that it? I think we have
That's it.
just the three, right? Okay, good. All right, next item on our list is old business.
There is none this evening.
Nothing, Mr. Box? Nothing at all?
Nothing at all.
Okay. All right, public comments on non-agenda items. There is no one in the audience, so we'll just skip over that.
We're done with Zoom?
Huh?
We're done with Zoom now.
Are we done with Zoom? I
Planning
think we
Commission
have
and
been for a
ZBA have
while.
been done with Zoom for a while. It's just the board still.
Board still does it.
Still, yeah, we're still doing it at the board, okay.
Okay. Commissioners' comments. Anyone?
I'll start.
Mrs. Smith?
I just want to say thank you. I'm honored to be a part of this board. As a trustee, I watched all the videos. I came to a couple of videos. I'm very honored to be a part of this. I've known Rich for years back in the day, so I was pleased to see that he was going to join as a newbie with me. Be patient with me. Hopefully I'll get into the swing of it just like you guys do, but I'm honored to be here, and thank you.
And we're very happy to have you
Thank
here.
you.
so,
Absolutely.
I mean, it goes both ways.
Thank you very much.
All right.
And once again, I want to say the same thing. I really appreciate being appointed. It's an honor, and it's good to see a lot of old faces. I hate to say the word old, but a lot of the
Yeah,
familiar
I'm
faces.
gonna take, well,
And
I guess I
everybody's
can't
been more
really.
than gracious and helpful in getting me started on this.
Oh, good. And welcome to you too, Mr. Meyer.
Yep. Like,
We go back to the fire department, like a billion years ago, I
Billion
think,
years ago.
somewhere, yeah. Okay, anyone else? All right, let's move on to the Macomb Township Board of Trustee Liaison update. Mr. Charles Oliver.
That's a big deal.
Thank you, Mr. Hardy. Well, we've had actually two planning commission, board of trustee meetings. We had one the 21st, and we just had one last week. So quite a few things happened. All the appointments were made, okay, and reappointments were made, so that was pretty nice. We're doing some work in the basement here, roughly about $60,000 worth of room. We need more room, so whatever they're doing, they're putting rooms in there and stuff. So we're growing and getting crowded is what's happening. And it's kind of funny, when we moved in here, we never thought we'd ever use the basement. And here we are using it now. So it goes to show you how fast things grow. On the last meeting that we had, Board of Trustee meeting, we changed our tax abatements so we went from a 12-year down to a 9-year. And it just kind of got rebuilt the way that we took it all in and modified it, and so it's turned out pretty good. The board approved that. And the grant writing lady, her name was Liz Rowe, she was extended a 6-month extension for grant writing, so. And that's kind of a long-term business, grants. You just don't apply and get a check in the mail, so it's kind of a slow-moving vehicle.
Right.
It does get there, hopefully. It sounds like there's a few items in the pipeline, so another 6 months we'll know.
Okay.
And that kind of wraps it up.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Oliver.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, Mr. Bentley's not here, someone's gotta ask Charlie.
Hey, I told
there
you,
you
no
go.
questions.
Just out of curiosity, do we know how many and what type of grants we've been looking for? Or are we kind of focused in a direction, or is it more of a general thing?
We caught a grant already for the Park and Rec, swimming pool lift, handicap lift. So, and we've already got that. And I understand there's some, money that we could use for sidewalk. That'd be the best way to describe it. We're looking into that. So there is some,
Definitely a hot
there's
button
some
issue for the residents.
potential out there. But it really, when you really start getting into the grants and see the steps and the follow-up you gotta take, and even when these grants are instrumented, then there's follow-up to the money that comes in and the steps you gotta make. So it's quite a complicated business. It does work, because a lot of communities get money, and so the board still is really confident that this is gonna,
Pay
the
for
fruits
itself,
will pay off, work.
Mr. Box, I'm just curious, and if I could be humored just for a second, have we considered what we might want to put in the master plan to support potential grants in the future? I know that was a big part of why we did the recreation plan, was for potential grants there. And maybe it's just a broad thing, obviously, sidewalks are a goal in there, but has that been something we've talked about or thought through?
Yes, in fact, through this grant writing process, for the sidewalks that he referred to, that's through what's called a TAP grant, or Transportation Alternatives Program. We have put some images and some text into the master plan to help align, to show that is a goal of the township.
Good.
And I want to add one thing for clarification. On the tax abatements, it's a 50% reduction, and it's only for industrial. So, sorry, Mr. Wynn, we can't help you there. That's all it's allowed to. And that's it.
Okay. All right. Planning Department items.
I think you skipped the ZBA liaison.
Oh, I skipped the ZBA liaison.
I mean, it's hard to
Mr.
follow,
Tuckfield,
Mr.
I am
Oliver.
so sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Tuckfield.
Just briefly, Ms. Lawson and myself were up for reappointment. We did get reappointed at the same time the planning commissioners were appointed. So I appreciate the board's voting us back in on that. We did do a little bit different this time in that the ZBA liaison's term is now aligned with the planning commission's term. This has not been done before, so my terms have generally been offset. And we think this is good to align, possibly a legal thing, but practically speaking, even past the legal thing, if they're not aligned, it becomes much more difficult to take a person out of the position, quite frankly. As a matter of fact, when I was first put in the position, there was some who floated that particular probability as a reason why it was good to be in that position. So Mr. Box had talked about it, I had mentioned it to him, other people had talked about it, and I think the general consensus was it was good to align them, it's better for the spot. and better for the township. So I'm glad we were all on the same page on that one. The township board got it done, and I think it's one of those small things that can get easily overlooked, but it's a good step in the right direction as an overall case. So that was good. I think we had a ZBA meeting since last time. I don't know if there's anything necessarily I would report, and I think that probably wraps up what I have.
All right, well, thank you very much. Now, planning department items. Mr. Box, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 items to report on. Mr. Bentley had given us comments on the meeting minutes. He had also suggested adding election of officers to the agenda, which we did. He also suggested adding to the agenda this evening the annual report. So we are working on that. It should be in front of you at our next meeting. And the other item I wanted to touch base on is the master plan itself. So we are required, as you know, to put it out there for the neighboring communities. There's a statutory requirement for 63-day comment period. I believe tomorrow is the last day of that comment period. Our intentions are then to take all the comments we've received, fine-tune it, and have it in front of you at the second planning commission meeting in the month of February, and have the public hearing at that time. Obviously, assuming everyone likes what they see, we would then move forward to the board the following week.
Okay. Nothing else?
That's it.
All right. Motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion to adjourn.
All right. Motion by Mrs. Smith, supported by Mr. Meyerly. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion is passed, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.